Evan first saw the listing taped crookedly to a library bulletin board. A photograph of a dark little cabin swallowed by pines. 3 words under it in block letters. Available for one. The county's land bank wanted a living soul inside the property before winter broke pipes again, so they priced the past at $1 and a promise to repair. Evan had $1, crumpled and warm from his pocket, and a promise that lived stubbornly in his chest. He signed papers with hands that shook, then walked out into November air, holding a key that felt impossible. People said nobody wanted the place because the forest had closed around it like an old fist, because the road turned to ruts and then to memory, because the last owner left in a hurry and never came back. Evan had slept under overpasses, in doorways, on church steps, 2 blocks from baking light, so the cabin's rumors sounded almost like welcome. He rode the last bus, then another mile on foot, boots whispering in leaves. The mailbox leaned like a tired man. The roofline sagged politely. Still, a lightness rose in him, small and stubborn as a match head. He found the porch by touch, boards softened by rain and time, and set his backpack down carefully, as if the house might startle. The key scraped the lock with a weary cough. Inside smelled like damp wood and mouse dreams. His breath smoked in the doorway. Dust caught the angled light in patient constellations. There was the shape of a table, a sink without a faucet, a stove with its mouth open. He took 2 steps and stopped, because somewhere above him a floorboard answered, not with settling, but with caution, the kind of sound people make when hiding. He spoke into the quiet the way you speak to stray dogs, and closed doors. "Hello." The stairwell was a darker stripe at the room's edge. Footsteps crossed it leisurely. Then a figure appeared at the top. A young woman in a faded hoodie, jeans scuffed at the knees, hair pulled into a knot that had given up. She didn't gasp. She studied him. Her hands were empty and tense. "You must be the owner," she said, voice steady, not welcoming. "I've been taking care of this place." Evan nodded before certainty caught up. "I paid $1, he said. She nodded once, as if acknowledging a weather report. "Then you own the roof that leaks, and the door that groans, and the mice with seniority. My name's Maya." She stepped down 2 stairs and stopped. "No one told me someone was coming." Evan looked at the key in his pocket and then at her face, which was tired without surrender. "No one told me someone was here." Maya's eyes flicked to his backpack. "I've been patching, keeping the well clean, paying property tax online when I could. This place took me in. I've been trying to return the favor." Evan hadn't heard someone defend a house before. The sound touched something old in him. "I bought it because it was cheap," he said, then corrected himself. "And because it had a door I could close." Maya's mouth tilted. "Doors are good. Closing them is better." He set his backpack on the table's ghost and eased himself into a chair that answered with a groan. "I won't throw you out," he said, "but I need to understand." Outside, the pines whispered with wind. Inside, the pipes ticked with cooling. "Okay," she said. "Ask." She stood at the banister, a sentinel. She told him about the night buses and the daytime libraries, about losing a rental when the landlord sold, about the way people's eyes slide off you when your mailing address becomes the back of your hand. 3 winters ago, she found the cabin by following a rumor from a volunteer who thought it might be safe. The door was swollen and the roof soft, but the bones held. She scrubbed, patched, coaxed the well awake. "I pay the electric out of a prepaid card," she said quietly. It blinks sometimes, but I keep it alive." She didn't look away. Evan listened, as if heat could be made from attention. "This place saved me," she went on, voice steadying. "But it also saved something else." She crossed to the hearth and pried up a loose brick. From the hollow she drew a tin, old and clean. Inside lay a folded survey map, a battered flash drive, 2 photographs of a riverbank stained the wrong color. "There's a company," she said. "They've been dumping upstream and calling it Progress. My dad worked there. He found out and took these. Then he disappeared. People came looking for his evidence and for me." Evan studied the photos. Fish bellies turned to chalk, reeds browned at the tips, a rust film braiding the current. The map was marked with patient X's. The flash drive wore a cracked sticker that read "Tests." "They came here?" he asked. Maya nodded. "Twice. First time they kicked in the shed and called it trespassing. Second time they stood right there at the tree line and told me accidents happen in lonely places. I stopped sleeping nights after that. Kept the lights dark. Kept a bag packed." Her voice thinned. "The land bank must have thought the place abandoned." Evan realized his fingers had tightened around the chair until the wood protested. He relaxed them and looked at the key again, which felt heavier with every breath. "I can't make those men disappear," he said, "but I can make it harder for them to walk through this door." Maya's eyes searched his face, measuring something he couldn't see. "You don't even know me." He shrugged. "I know enough." He stood, tested the back door, and slid the bolt that had been painted open. "First, we fix what we can. Then tomorrow we go to the county. Evidence wants daylight." They worked until the light thinned to the color of dishwater. Evan found scrap screws in a coffee can, tightened hinges, braced 2 soft steps with a board pried from the shed. Maya cleared a blackened pan and made soup from stubborn things: carrots, a potato, an onion that still remembers sweetness. They ate at the table's outline, bowls balanced on their knees. "I used to think if I just stayed quiet long enough, trouble would lose interest," she said. "Trouble can nap," Evan answered, "but it doesn't forget." He smiled, small. "So we keep it bored by staying unpredictable." Night folded itself over the forest. The cabin ticked and sighed like an animal settling. Evan took the floor near the door with his backpack as a pillow and a hammer within reach. Maya slept upstairs, her footsteps earlier mapping a path between mattress and window. Around midnight, a coyote barked. Then silence deepened. Somewhere down the hill, an engine murmured, then drifted away. Evan lay awake, counting between tree breaths, the way he used to measure his pulse on unforgiving nights. When sleep finally unhooked him, it was thin and wired, ready to tear at the smallest wrong noise outside. Morning found the windows silvered and the kettle complaining. Maya handed him coffee in a chipped mug with a faded lighthouse. Evan felt the warmth and remembered other doorsteps, other mornings that never had coffee. "County office opens at 9, she said. "If we bring what I have, they have to act." He nodded, though certainty came in slow pieces. They wrapped the map in waxed paper, slid the flash drive into a zip bag, tucked the photos into an envelope that still smelled faintly of printer ink. Outside, the frost traced ferns along the steps, delicate, easily broken today. They chose to walk to the bus stop rather than trust the truck that might not start. The path cut through firs grown close as brothers, then opened to the dirt road. Tire tracks scarred it fresh, a tread with stones pressed like fossils. Maya's hand tightened on the envelope. "We weren't the only ones awake," she said. A blue jay scolded them for existing. Evan tasted the cold and something metallic beneath it. Twice he paused, the way dogs do, listening past his own breathing. The forest answered with wind and the distant knock of a woodpecker, nothing else. The bus stop was a crooked sign beside a patch of gravel that regretted being a parking lot. A woman in a red coat waited with a tote full of groceries and sympathy she kept to herself. When the bus finally rumbled up late and apologetic, the driver shook his head. "Road work on the highway," he said. "Detour all morning." They climbed aboard, sitting near the back, envelope between them like a sleeping cat. As the bus pulled away, Maya's phone vibrated to life for the first time in days. Unknown number. She let it ring until it gave up. The county building wore fluorescent lights and linoleum like a tired smile. A clerk with a cardigan and a name tag that said Gladys listened while Evan explained slowly, setting the envelope on the counter as if it might bruise. Gladys opened it with careful fingers, studied the photos, then the map, then the flash drive. "Sit," she said, and disappeared. Minutes widened. A man in a tie returned with her, introduced himself as Assistant County Attorney Pierce, and asked them to recount everything again, this time into a recorder. When he finished, he said, "You did the right thing." Pierce printed a receipt, slid it across with a pen, then lowered his voice. "If what's on this drive matches these photos, there will be investigations, injunctions, maybe criminal charges. But that takes time, and people who poison water rarely wait politely. I'm asking you both to be careful until we coordinate with state environmental officers." He glanced at Evan's clothes, not unkindly. "Do you have somewhere safe tonight?" Evan hesitated, then nodded toward Maya. "We have a door we can close." Pierce held his gaze a beat longer, reading the unspoken. "Lock it. I'll call by evening with updates, please." They left with a thin folder and thicker nerves. On the bus back, Evan watched the same furs unspool, but now each shadow looked like a decision. A silver pickup showed up behind them after the detour ended and stayed there through 3 stops, close enough to see a cracked fog light. When they climbed down at the gravel patch, the truck rolled past without glancing, then parked at the far bend where the trees began crowding. Maya didn't turn her head. "Walk normal," she said. "If it's nothing, we'll be home explaining ourselves to panic for no reason later." At the cabin, they moved like stagehands between acts. Evan wedged a dowel into the back window track, screwed a hasp onto the cellar door, and stacked firewood where it could become a barricade. Maya packed a tote with essentials and hid it under the stairs beside the loose brick. When the phone finally rang, Pierce's number glowed. "We've confirmed contamination from preliminary samples," he said. "We're drafting an emergency order. Stay put. Do not engage anyone. Deputies will swing by near dusk." Evan thanked him and hung up. The forest listened. Then a slow engine turned into the drive. The silver pickup idled with the patience of a bad idea. 2 men stepped out, wearing work boots that hadn't seen work recently, and smiles that practiced kindness like a second language. One tapped the porch post with his knuckles, friendly as weather. "Afternoon," he called. "County sent us ahead to look things over. Mind if we come in?" Evan stood inside the door, hammer hidden along his thigh. Maya's breath feathered beside him. He thought about dollar bills and promises, about doors and the privilege of closing them. "Show me your badges," he said. The smiles forgot their lines. The 2 men on the porch shifted when Evan demanded badges. Their smiles cracked, replaced by the kind of stillness wolves carry when they realize the deer won't run. One of them tugged at his jacket pocket slowly, but there was no badge, only a folded piece of paper he waved like authority. "We're contractors," he said, "checking structural safety." Evan shook his head. "Contractors knock during the day. Contractors bring clipboards, not trucks with tinted windows." His voice was calm but edged, the way soldiers speak when the next move matters. Behind him, Maya clutched the envelope tighter. The man on the left took a step forward, boot creaking against the porch. "Look, buddy, we're not here to cause trouble. Just making sure nobody's squatting where they don't belong." Evan let the silence stretch until the man's eyes flickered. "We belong," Evan said. "And if you're worried about squatting, the county attorney will clear it up with you directly. He has all the evidence now." That landed. The man's jaw tightened. The second one muttered, "Should have burned the place down years ago." They turned slowly, walked back to their truck, and drove away with dust curling behind them. Maya's breath rushed out in a shiver. "They'll be back," she whispered. Evan nodded, closing the door firmly, sliding the bolt with finality. "Then we'll be ready." He moved through the cabin with new eyes, measuring windows, doors, hinges. Every weak board, every draft, every loose nail became part of his mental map. "This house kept you alive," he said. "Now we'll keep it alive." Maya watched him, something like trust flickering in her gaze. She had been alone so long she'd forgotten how it felt to share danger. It was heavier, but it was also less lonely. The following days blurred into work. They repaired the roof with tar paper scavenged from the shed, braced the porch with salvaged beams, and stacked firewood waist-high along the walls like primitive armor. Evan showed Maya how to set noise trap strings tied to tin cans along the back fence, and she showed him where the well pump groaned if pulled too hard. They became a team, stitched together by necessity. At night, when the forest sighed around them, they spoke in low voices about the lives they had lost and the fragile new one they were building, dollar by stubborn dollar. One morning, a deputy's cruiser rolled up the drive. The officer introduced himself as Dawson, a man with tired eyes and a wary kindness. "Pierce filled me in," he said, resting a hand on his belt. "We'll be keeping watch. Those men have history security for the company, mostly intimidation work. But with what you turned in, the state's already circling. You just need to stay steady," Evan asked. "Will steady be enough?" Dawson paused. "Sometimes steady is everything." He drove away, leaving behind the crunch of tires and a reassurance that felt thin but real. Maya exhaled, shoulders loosening slightly. The tension didn't vanish. Every snapped twig outside made them pause. Every car engine on the distant road sounded like trouble rehearsing. Yet, in the waiting, life began to stitch itself. Evan chopped wood with a rhythm that calmed him, muscles remembering work. Maya painted the window frames with leftover white, laughter slipping out when her brush left streaks on her cheek. At night, Evan told her about his years drifting shelters, jobs lost, nights colder than bone. She told him about her father's stubborn integrity and how truth had cost him everything. Two broken stories, learning how to fit together. The company didn't wait long. 3 days after the deputy's visit, the silver truck returned at dusk, this time with another following behind. Engines idled at the tree line, headlights cutting across the yard like search beams. Maya stiffened, but Evan put a hand on her shoulder. "We don't go out. We don't take their bait." The men lingered, smoked cigarettes, then revved engines loud enough to rattle windows before rolling away. "It's a game," Evan said, jaw tight. "They want fear to do the work for them." Maya nodded, though her hands shook. The cabin's walls felt both fragile and fierce. The next morning, a letter appeared, wedged under the door. Plain paper, typed words. Leave by Friday. Accidents happen in the woods. Maya stared at it, her face pale. Evan folded it carefully, slid it into the tin with the map and photos. Threats mean we hurt them. They wouldn't bother if they weren't afraid. His voice was steady, but inside, a storm tightened. He had faced men like this before in alleys, in deserts, in boardrooms, pretending to be safe. Fear was their language. He spoke a different one, resilience, and he meant to teach it, slowly, clearly. By the week's end, deputies returned, this time with paperwork. Court granted an injunction, Dawson explained. Company can't touch this land until investigation closes. That means you're safe for now. Maya's shoulders sagged with relief, but Evan only nodded. Safe is a word men like them don't respect, he muttered. Still, when the deputies left, he let himself breathe easier. For the first time, they allowed the lamps to burn late into the night. The cabin glowed like a lantern in the woods, fragile but defiant. Maya whispered, It looks like home again. Evan almost smiled. It's earning the name. As weeks passed, winter pressed harder. Snow fell thick across the pines, muffling footsteps and brightening nights. Evan shoveled paths, his breath clouding, while Maya kept the stove fed with wood that popped and hissed like memory. They lived small but steady, soup simmering, windows sealed, laughter sometimes rising like sparks. But the past never loosened completely. Letters came in the mail, slot-thin envelopes with empty pages, meant only to remind them someone watched. Once, Evan found boot prints circling the well. He didn't tell Maya, but he added another layer of traps around the yard. Quiet vigilance became their rhythm. Then, in late January, news broke. The state environmental agency announced formal charges: illegal dumping, falsified reports, obstruction. Headlines spread faster than rumor. The company's executives denied, deflected, but the evidence was too heavy. The map and photos too precise. Reporters came sniffing, but deputies kept them at the road. One evening, Dawson arrived, grinning faintly. You two just brought down a giant, he said. Maya blinked. We just wanted clean water. Evan looked at her, at the glow in her face he hadn't seen before. For the first time in years, she seemed lighter, like someone who believed in tomorrow. With the company cornered, the threats dwindled. Trucks stopped appearing, letters ceased. The silence of the forest felt different, less like watchfulness, more like peace. Evan repaired the last window pane, straightened the leaning mailbox, and built a new table from pine boards planed smooth. When he set it inside, Maya ran her hand across it and whispered, Feels like this place wants us. Evan didn't answer, but he thought of the dollar, the key, the way the house had waited. A man who had been unwanted, a woman who had been threatened. Somehow, the cabin had chosen both, and they chose back. Spring arrived slow, with streams unfreezing and birds rehearsing songs. The forest, once a wall, began to feel like a shield. Evan planted a garden in the clearing, potatoes, beans, tomatoes in careful rows. Maya tended flowers near the porch, laughing when deer nibbled them. Life grew around them, stubborn and alive. Sometimes visitors came, Dawson checking in, volunteers offering supplies, neighbors curious but respectful. Each time, Evan felt the cabin's story spreading outward, a ripple of resilience. Maya began sketching the forest, her drawings taped along the walls, proof that the house was no longer empty. It had voices again. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching dusk soak into the trees, Maya turned to him. "Do you ever regret it, buying this place?" Evan shook his head. "It was just $1, but it gave me something I'd lost long before the street's purpose." He glanced at her, at the lines of her face lit by fading sun. "And it gave me you." She looked down, a smile tugging. "I thought I was protecting this house. Turns out it was protecting me. Maybe it was just waiting for you." Silence stretched, but it was gentle, full of belonging. Summer followed, and the cabin became alive with visitors. Children chasing fireflies, neighbors bringing pie, even reporters who wanted to photograph the dollar miracle. Evan disliked the attention, but Maya answered with grace, telling their story carefully. Never sensational, she always ended the same way. Strength isn't about walls. It's about refusing to be erased. People left, thoughtful, sometimes tearful. Evan watched quietly, realizing she had found her father's voice again, carried forward through courage. At night, when the forest hushed, he thanked the house in silence for being cheap enough to save, strong enough to hold, and kind enough to wait. By autumn, the cabin no longer sagged. Its roof was braced, walls painted, windows clean. Inside, warmth hummed, laughter flickered, meals were shared. Evan built shelves. Maya filled them with books rescued from thrift stores. They had turned survival into living, and living into something more. One afternoon, Evan nailed a small sign above the door. Home. Maya ran her fingers over the letters, eyes wet. $1 never bought so much, she whispered. He smiled, quiet. It wasn't the dollar, it was the chance. The cabin creaked in the breeze, as if agreeing. Outside, the pines stood witness. Years later, people still told the story of the cabin bought for $1, the house that sheltered evidence and guarded lives. Children in town grew up calling it the house that chose its owners. Reporters lost interest, companies folded, but the forest kept its secrets and its strength. Evan and Maya aged into their life there, not rich, but steady, not forgotten, but rooted. And when neighbors walked past on evening trails, they often paused to see the porch light glowing warm through the trees. Proof that sometimes the smallest key unlocks the largest salvation. The house kept watch,